Who holds the pen controls the narrative. The playwright gets to decide who lives, who dies, for they are the only ones who tell the story. But these days, audience members are not satisfied to simply sit back and watch a plot unfold before them. No, they want to be more involved and have a say in what happens.
Immersive theater creates this opportunity for audience members to invest in the unfolding of the narrative. However, how do you share authorship between the creator and the audience? Too much control on the author's side, and the audience are mere spectators. Too much control on the audience's side, and there's an unpredictability that could jeopardize the quality of the story. With these questions in mind, our group chose immersive theater as our research subject.
Our research group is comprised of producing and advanced theatre practice master students. Each of us is interested in creating immersive work, but approach it from different perspectives. When we first attempted to combine our perspectives and experiences, we were initially interested in examining business models. So our research question began as, what makes an immersive show successful?
However, we quickly realized that the scope of our question far outreached our abilities in this short unit. Early on in our process, we discovered that success is a vague term which can't really be measured. Based on what our research was telling us, we decided instead to focus on sustained commitment as a measure of success, and approached it from a more creative standpoint, focusing on the dramaturgy of immersive productions.
Therefore, our research question changed to how can immersive show achieve sustainable commitment through spatial presence and procedural authorship. We found that popular immersive shows by London-based companies such as Punch Drunk, Collab Theatre, and Secret Cinema strike the perfect balance of shared authorship. Using case studies and research, our team embarked on a journey to see the common elements which these popular immersive shows have in common.
We will first explain how we conducted our research, and then through theories of sustained commitment, procedural authorship, and spatial presence by experts such as Gareth White and Dr. Joanna Bucknell, we will begin to unravel the structure that makes an immersive show successful. As we introduce new concepts, we will use our case studies to exemplify and explain each concept. After our conclusions, we will also discuss next steps in continuing our research.
Our methodology is comparative case studies, which means that we are analyzing the similarities, differences, and patterns across multiple cases. Essentially, we are applying critical research to case studies and interviews to evaluate our question. Because the motivation for sustained commitment cannot be empirically measured, we must instead rely on qualitative data, such as personal accounts and examples of productions, which have achieved a high level of audience commitment to justify our conclusions.
So, what is sustained commitment? An Indian entertainment scholar, Srinivas, wrote in 1999 that repeat viewing is a social experience in which repeaters have had time to form relationships with the characters, and by doing so, community atmosphere emerges in the theater. Basically, audiences become active members and not passive spectators. They need to feel that they are part of the show and interdependent with the performers. They need to feel that the experience is shared with performers and fellow audiences. According to Srinivas, participation allows audiences to reconstruct the piece and provides an experience that is heterogeneous and contextual, which allows audiences to create bonds with the performance. A good example of sustained commitment is Sleep No More.
Sleep No More has accumulated a dedicated following of superfans, patrons who have seen the show up to 200 times. For those who don't know, Sleep No More is a show loosely based on Macbeth and Hitchcock's film Vertigo. It prioritizes aesthetics and one-on-ones, which creates exclusivity, but also encourages community. We were able to interview Phil from the US, a devout Sleep No More superfan who has seen the show over 100 times, about why he likes the show so much. He answered that.
It's not the story that keeps me coming back, but catching some of my favorite performers in new and different roles. I regularly head to the bar space where I can remove the mask and converse with either the bar characters or other people that I may know in the audience.
Phil enjoys the social experience and the relationship formed through participation.
The ladder you see here is an American marketing theorist Payne's ladder of loyalty. It shows the different stages of customer relationship. A prospect can become a customer, client, and finally an advocate. The more you climb up the loyalty ladder, the more interaction and meanings audiences need from the experience. For single ticket purchasers, they only ask for entertainment and stimulation, but for extreme loyal audiences, they need interdependence and shared risk, as the Superhand has answered in our interview.
By sustained commitment, theatre communities are formed. Components for building a sense of community, according to American community psychologist Macmillan and Chavez, are membership, audience agency, fulfillment of needs, and shared emotional connection. Members must invest financially and emotionally in their membership. Audience must keep coming back, have autonomy, feel entertained, and that they are part of the show. These four components come up over and over in our presentation from different practitioners and terms such as Gareth White's idea of agency. However, the merits of agency in particular sparked a larger debate that we are not going to get into in this presentation.
One of the key reasons that the Sleep No More superfans said they liked the show was because they felt immersed in the world of the show. They felt like they were walking through a novel or living a character's experience for themselves. Dr. Josephine Macon, a London-based theater practitioner, says,
Immersion arises when the artwork and technical apparatus, the message and medium of perception, converge into an inseparable whole.
In other words, when a show is immersive, the audience forget that they are watching a show and lose themselves in the production. They stop thinking of themselves as audience members watching a play and instead focus completely on the play itself.
Dr. Macon continues saying,
The principle of immersion is used to withdraw the apparatus of the medium of illusion from the perception of the observers to maximize the intensity of the message being transported.
Hence, the goal of immersion is to make the audience forget that they are watching a play and instead make them focus and engage with the message of your production directly rather than any technical or design elements.
Immersive theater tries to achieve this goal by physically placing the audience in the world of the play rather than in the seat behind the fourth wall. Audiences can physically explore and experience the same world as characters and narrative of the production they are engaging with.
Dr. Joanna Bucknell, UK-based immersive theatre practitioner, says,
Essentially, immersive performances provides a liminal space in which to create, imagine, and try out. It is a safe environment in which to indulge in the act of shallow play, free from the usual constraints that the culture presents in life praxis and thereby free from weighty consequences.
Through immersive theatre, audience members are given a chance to escape the mundanity of life and be transported to a new world where they can take on new roles and take risks without real-life consequences.
When immersion is successful, patrons become spatially present. The model for spatial presence was established by a team of psychologists to explain how and why audiences interact and engage with entertainment media.
According to Swiss communication science practitioner Werner Wirth, spatial presence is a sense of being there, which occurs when part of all of a person's perception fails to accurately acknowledge the role of technology that makes it appear that they are in a physical location and environment different from their actual location and environment in the physical world.
In other words, when an audience member achieves spatial presence, they feel like they are in the world of the performance.
The model for spatial presence explains a variety of ways spatial presence can be achieved. But since spatial presence can apply to a wide range of entertainment media, such as video games, books, or movies, we will only focus on the applications relevant to immersive theater.
According to the model, the more senses a media environment activates in its audience, the more likely it is that the audience will feel like they are really there in the environment. This is why many immersive productions encourage exploring the space by touching, smelling, or even tasting the production. Secret cinema encouraged this by placing audiences inside the fictional worlds of famous films and TV shows.
London-based entertainment company Secret Cinema stages film screenings inside immersive theater landscapes that mirror environments featured in well-known films and TV shows such as James Bond 007, Dirty Dancing, and Stranger Things. In the Stranger Things version, there were shops that resembled the 80s, everywhere from Coke float drinks to Madonna music to bright green leg warmers, which made us feel that we are really there in the environment.
However, if you throw too much at your audience all at once, they might get sensory overload, which will pull them out of the performance and break the immersion of your world. This is a point we'll come back to when we discuss procedural authorship.
Additionally, to keep up that sense of immersion, you must avoid interruptions or distractions from your production. Things like cell phone ringing break the audience's impression that they actually are living in that world. When Danny, Natsuki, and I went to research for the Secret Cinema Stranger Things, we found it odd how 11-year-old characters were serving jello shots before the party to the audiences.
The model of spatial presence also suggests that once you get the audience's attention, you have to be able to hold it as well. Flashing lights or loud music may gain the audience's interest automatically through involuntary reactions, but the content that follows must keep their attention as well. A production of flashing lights and loud noises leading you from room to room with nothing in between would get old very quickly.
Despite the various narratives in different immersive shows, the common elements we mentioned above are, in fact, some of the dramaturgical devices used in the design of the rules, as UK theatre practitioner and scholar Gareth White suggests in his writing. Writing the rules in immersive theatre is called procedural authorship, in which the authors of the immersive world sets out the rules of interactions for participants. The rules consist of not only what you can or cannot do in a world, but also the mechanics of how this world runs and the values this world embodies. Within the rules, participants' behaviors are induced in ways the immersive world is set, therefore provide predictability for authors and performers.
To put it in a simple way, procedural authorship can be described as the structure or the architecture of an event. It is essentially a framework. Through research, we find that there are two fundamentally different types of procedural authorships. One is to leave blanks to the audience. In this way, audiences are required to fill in the blanks, making changes and taking actions, thus structurally changing the outcome of the performance or the event. For example, who has played the game Becoming Human on PS4 or the board game Cluedo? Sandbox game, board game, and forum theater are using the fill-in-the-blank types of procedural authorship.
Another one is to set boundaries for the audience. This type of procedural authorship is more commonly seen in today's immersive theater. Boundaries, essentially rules, are set and given to the audience. They can only do what is allowed, and the outcome of the performance or event is usually fixed. Sleep No More and The Wolf of Wall Street are good examples of shows that set boundaries.
No matter what types of procedural authorship is applied, the audiences are no longer passive observers, but a more active participant. In this sense, we could say that the meaning of such performance is discovered by actors and audiences collaboratively.
As the authorship is constantly exchanged between performers and participants, the process of belief building in immersive theater is a collective contribution to reach a single and all definition of the world. We do that based on the fact that we all perceive situations in the context that enables us to understand the context and adjust our behaviors when the situation changes.
In other words, when we step into a new world, we try to comprehend it and adjust our behavior to match the situation using what we already know outside this new world. To incorporate this in procedural authorship, Gareth White proposes that we must include these three elements when creating a believable procedure: episoding conventions, appearance formula, and resource continuity.
Episoding conventions are the signals or conventions that distinguish one activity from the others. It can be verbal or nonverbal. It gives participants signifiers about what is about to happen that's different from their usual experience. The conventions are often used to invite participants to the new world and to facilitate the situation so that the audience can settle into the new world.
Let's take a look at London-based immersive theater company Collab Theatre's latest show, Crooks 1926. Collab is known for productions that focuses on escapism, transporting the audience to a new time period and giving them a freedom to play in a new role. Crooks 1926 is set in a refurbished pub in Elephant and Castle. A priest greets the audience at the door and assigns a workers' union membership to each audience member upon entering the premises. Actors dressed in 1920s style with their flat caps interact with the audience and ease them into the Cockney underground world of the show, while the audience enjoy pre-drinks before the main event. Newspapers spread around in the area gives the audience context of the time period and a glimpse of who the characters are. All of these are elements of episoding conventions, which transports the audience from a long day at their office day job to the criminal world of Elephant and Castle.
Without encountering any narrative, you already know that you are in a different time and world through your interactions with the space. If these conventions are played well, the audience can quickly accept the new situation and interact with it.
Appearance formula describes a person-character relationship. This does not only apply to performers, but also the audience. When stepping into an immersive world, your role inside the world may be different from the ones in the outside reality. Your identity and your behavior may be, on the one hand, restricted by your relationship to the world and the people in it. On the other hand, your role may open up possibilities for other roles, thus adding meaning to the immersive world. Here, the idea of role or character is used in its very loose definition. It means who you are in this world.
For example, in Sleep No More, your role may be a ghost that wanders around and observes scenes, whereas in Crooks, your role may be a union member. The role you play can determine your behavior and your interactions with other roles, whether they are played by performers or other audience members.
Resource continuity describes the ways in which individuals brings aspects to themselves to different roles and maintain a connection across various activities. In order to understand the immersive world, participants need some materials that they can relate as reference points. These materials can be language, cultural background, and understanding of a genre. This may be difficult for people since it also depends on the individual's backgrounds. Audiences' abilities to relate themselves in the world will determine how effective they can construct the role and adapt to the world.
Take The Wolf of Wall Street as an example of resource continuity. For those who have not seen the show, it is created by London-based immersive director Alexander Wright, based on the film starring Leonardo DiCaprio about a New York stockbroker. It will be difficult for some people to relate if they do not understand the financial industry. Sleep No More will pose barriers for first-time goers who have never experienced physical theater. Therefore, resource continuity is something procedural authors need to think about when designing their rules. Is your rule accessible for most of your audience? Does it pose barriers for certain groups?
All these elements need to be considered in writing the procedure, since each decision will affect the experiences as well as audience's agency within the immersive world.
As we just discussed, we need to make the world believable first. And now, let's think about how the audience will experience the structure or the world we set up. We have already explained that there are two different types of procedural authorship. The difference between them is the difference of audience agency. In other words, what and how much influence or control do the audience have? The audience can have local agency, which is instant feedback, or global agency, which is structural influence.
For example, when an audience is engaged in a fight, the fight back from the other person is local agency, and the bad reputation and loss of friendship is a global agency. The two procedural authorships we mentioned before are the two ends of this spectrum. As we can see, the more control the creators have over the narrative, the less agency the audience have over the whole experience.
For example, in Wolf of Wall Street, the road is set. In Sleep No More, you can choose your own road. In Crook, you can slightly influence the outcome of the road you choose, but the big ending is still set. It is always a conundrum whether to have a brilliant but sad story or a very interactive, almost lifelike audience experience.
To understand the relation of agency and story and learn to balance them is very important when creating an immersive performance. However, good use of spatial presence could immerse the audience in the environment, keep catching their voluntary and involuntary attention, thus complementing the lack of agency.
The model of spatial presence supports key elements of procedural authorship. The model states that short-term orienting responses are primarily affected by form as opposed to content. When an audience member begins orienting themselves with the world of the play, boundaries and guidelines are set quickly and automatically in the brain. Therefore, audience members must be able to learn the rules of the world of your show quickly and simply.
Keeping with the concept of episoding conventions, it's best to lay out rules like no talking or please don't use your cell phone clearly and directly as the audience is entering the space.
However, like we talked about when discussing immersion, once you have an audience's attention, you need to keep it as well. This is where content becomes more important. A well-crafted narrative or experience will keep audiences focused and engaged with your production. And when it comes to sensory information, like smells, sights, or sounds, balance is key, especially if you need to hold your audience's attention for a long period of time.
It's important to have a variety of sensory information, but it must be complex information as well. For example, the rave scene in Sleep No More captures the audience's attention through loud, quick music and strobe lighting, but keeps them engaged with the abstract retelling of the prophecy from Macbeth.
Again, balance is important. As we mentioned a few slides back, audiences may be fatigued or overwhelmed if you throw too much at them all at once. Be sure to keep your sensory information exciting but manageable.
The theories of spatial presence and procedural authorship coincides with the common elements that we have pulled from the immersive shows that we have mentioned in this presentation. World building, audience agency, suspension of disbelief, role-playing, exclusivity, all is due to good procedural authorship. Of course, this is the power of spatial presence too, especially world building and role-playing.
Pulling together theories, case studies, and interviews, we have concluded that these are the factors that make audiences come back again and again, which is our definition for a show being successful.
Establish the rules quickly and concisely. Establish the audience's role through cues from the performers. Establish point of reference. Balance narrative and agency. Engage the senses. Direct attention away from the mechanics. Encourage a sense of community through exclusivity. Be consistent.
When we began our research, we assumed we would come to a conclusive model for procedurally authoring an immersive production, hence our research title being Fear No More. However, we have come to the conclusion that it is impossible to create one model that uniformly fits every immersive show. The elements we have discussed carry different weight in various types of immersive productions. For example, the narrative was strong for The Wolf of Wall Street, but Crook's 1926 had more agency. Sleep No More had very strong rules and boundaries set up from the beginning, while Stranger Things had more cues from performers.
We tried to craft a formula for creating effective immersive production that would gain sustained commitment from audiences, similar to the success seen in our case studies, like Sleep No More superfans. However, we were forming these ideas around live performances happening face-to-face. Then the coronavirus pandemic hit, and the world of theater changed.
As we discussed how our research might apply to digital or social distancing performances, we realized that many of our concepts still applied. The experience of the performance would need to be reimagined so that audiences can experience the world of the show without physically being present in the space. But the core structural elements of procedural authorship and spatial presence remain the same. Moving forward, we believe our next step is to explore how to apply these concepts to digital mediums while still crafting an immersive experience that inspires sustained commitment from audiences.
As theater makers, we need to think carefully when we design audience's experience in a show. Where to put the emphasis is what makes the show unique. Whatever the balance may be, though, these elements are essential in building a framework for an immersive show that continues to attract audiences again and again.